Yes, sir. The association we all love is finally back. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease, and we're going to get into it today. This is going to be a nice little switch up as we'll cover some of the hierarchy dynamics that are taking place in the league. And this is going to be a healthy discussion. No favoritism, no first take debate type of ESPN agenda driven. This is going to be straight facts, getting straight to the meat and potatoes. As this season is going to be way more pronounced as a new generation of players are pretty much going to fully take over, as guys like LeBron James and Kevin Durant will begin to slide down this hierarchy and it will be very apparent. And hell, who knows, maybe even Stephen Curry, but I still have him up there right now. This might be the final 2 years of his prime. And I will be doing a follow-up during the All-Star break to see which names either went up or down the list. And also during the regular season, I will be doing some game film on some of the dynamics I'm about to speak on. Just a quick side note, this tier 4 list right here are guys that are fringe all-stars. And also the top of the list, of course, is the superstars, which every year in the NBA, I would say since the modern era, there's really been about 4 to 5 guys at most that are at the top of this list. And of course, to start this off, we got Jokic at the very top. And make no mistake about it, he had the Denver Nuggets performing at a high level last season. As you can see, his wingmates, his teammates right here, Aaron Gordon, and we got Jamal Murray. I got them under tier 2. Usually Aaron Gordon, because he's really a two-way player, he's in this tier along with guys like OG Anunoby. But Jamal Murray, he's really going to be I would say, he's going to be the wild card, because Jamal Murray, aka Playoff Murray, at times when he turns up, he could perform at this level, this tier 1 level. Guys like Jaylen Brown in the 2024 playoffs, guys like Anthony Davis when he was in the bubble with the Lakers in the 2020 championship run, Devin Booker in the 2021 playoff run that the Phoenix Suns had. Jamal Murray could perform at that kind of level. But with him, sometimes during the regular season, he's kind of up and down. That's why I have him in this tier 2 part of the hierarchy. And again, with the Denver Nuggets, they did have a lot of dead weight on their team last season, especially with MPJ, his large contract. So they corrected a few things. They've improved their depth on their bench. And the Nuggets, make no mistake about it, they took OKC to 7 games, even with the team that they had last season, which was really an underrated series. And for some reason, Jokic, every single season, I would say the past 3 years, he keeps getting better and better and better. So I do expect the Nuggets to be in the mix for, I would say, the final 4 teams headed into the playoffs. And again, this is going to be very nuanced, these discussions, because these ladders kind of help put things into proper perspective, kind of give a different scope. As you can see, guys like Luka, I have him in between, because last season he wasn't quite in shape. He wasn't quite as healthy. He did come into the season in shape, but of course things happened. He got traded. So I have him in an in-between spot because the level he could take to this Lakers team is not really that high. LeBron James at his age, as you can see, I have him in the tier 1 status coming into this season because he's no longer in that realm of guys that can really lift teams up. LeBron James, the reason why people get stuck on his averages, oh, he's averaging 28 points a game or 25, 8 and 8, is because on the Lakers, he's allowed to be out there on the wing, taking all these shots, possessing the ball nonstop. He doesn't bring, his large size that he has down low in the post. So they kind of allow him to still play as if he's like LeBron James in 2009 in Cleveland. You see, back then when he averaged higher than 25 points a game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, it usually meant the Cavs would finish at the top of the conference. Now with him just averaging the same amount of points, still playing 35 minutes plus per game, it doesn't mean the same. It means the Lakers finishing really in the middle of the pack in the Western Conference, maybe even fighting to getting past the 7th seed. And the way their team is set up even now, it's not as quite competitive. You got LeBron James in his 40s. You got Luka, who's already kind of slow defensively, mixed with Austin Reeves out there in the perimeter. Who's really defending for the Lakers? No wonder Anthony Edwards was cooking them up last year in the playoffs. And as you can see, I got Ant-Man right here in this ladder in between tier 1 and tier 2. because he's definitely have leveled up with his three-point shooting and his playmaking ability. Sometimes, surprisingly, the easiest thing, him finishing at the rim, which in last year's playoff matchup against the Lakers, he blew a lot of layups, man. I'm just like, what's up with that? But Ant-Man is definitely leveling up. He has the talent. He has a two-way ability. He can elevate the T-Wolves to a whole nother level. So it wouldn't shock me if during All-Star break, depending on what the T-Wolves, what kind of season they're going to have, if he levels up and actually gets in this tier 1 status. I expect him to be in this superstar status within the next 3 seasons. Ant-Man is definitely, he should be able to get up there, as guys like Stephen Curry will eventually make his way down this ladder. Luka, of course, is going to be in there. I have him probably by the All-Star break. I probably have him in this tier. But again, that's an update for another day. Ant-Man's wingman, Julius Randle, I have him in tier 2. Julius Randle, no lie, with the Knicks, there was a lot of misunderstanding on what kind of player he is. He can play make, he has a nice face-up game. Sometimes it is hard to build around him, but he could be a really good wingman to have. Because in his final season alongside Brunson in New York, when they had OG Anunoby on their team, they were cooking. They were cooking before he got injured, and he really never got the chance to prove himself to see if that dynamic between him, OG, and Brunson could really work. They had about 15 games, and I believe their record was about 13-2. And the Knicks were nowhere near performing at that kind of level before OG had came to the team. So Julius Randle alongside Anthony Edwards, we seen a nice preview last season in the playoffs going against the Lakers, where I believe Randle averaged 25 points a game. He was killing. LeBron could not handle him at all, and he was presenting a matchup problem for the Lakers. But now for him, going into year 2 in Minnesota, he should be more comfortable in their system. He has secured a more longer-term deal out there, so he has more security. So guys' mental approach may be different coming into the season. But Randle is another wild card, because it wouldn't shock me if he comes up to this point in the ladder during the All-Star break or even during the playoffs, and Anthony Edwards ascends to this level. It wouldn't shock me at all if that was the case. Randle has made the All-NBA team twice while being in New York, and he was a 2-time All-Star, so injuries have plagued him a little bit during his time out in NYC. And speaking about the boys in NYC, my man Jalen Brunson, I would say Jalen Brunson, I'll still have him on this level because defensively, Brunson does present a problem for the Knicks along with him and Karl-Anthony Towns. But as you can see, the Knicks have 2 players that are at this level. And it wouldn't shock me if Brunson, really, I would say based off of last season's performance, I should have him on this level, this tier 1 level. But for now, once again, because of his defense, I would say him and Towns are at this level. Towns really has a talent level to be here consistently. But again, because of his lack of focus on defense, and maybe because it was a system that the Knicks were in with Tom Thibodeau, not necessarily utilizing the fact that they had Bridges, Mikal, Towns, running pick and roll with Brunson and Towns more often, they just didn't really look like a team that had a high-powered offense for all the firepower that they have. As you can see, I have OG Anunoby at the tier 2 status. Because again, just like Aaron Gordon, they present that two-way player that can easily drop 20 points a game also. But on the defensive end, they bring a lot to the team because they could defend multiple positions and they could lock guys up. Even guys like Anthony Davis with his size, you could match up OG against him. And just going down the list, Mikal Bridges, this is another wild card for the Knicks. He's in that fringe all-star kind of situation down here. All these guys in this tier 4, they're fringe all-stars. And Mikal can level up with his shooting, become more of a spot-up shooter or work on his pull-up game. And he can at least just level up into this all-star status. More consistent guys who makes an all-star team or just put up all-star numbers. Then that could really change the dynamic for the Knicks. They don't really need guys to hit this tier 1 status. The Knicks have a lot of guys who are just on the verge of that, or guys who can just, look at it, they have 3 players right here. I have tier 2, in between tier 2 and tier 1. And Mikal could just hit that fringe all-star. that can really change the dynamics of that team. But they have the right coach and Mike Brown out in New York. What he did with the Sacramento Kings in 2023, making them the #1 offense with way lesser talent. With way lesser talent than what the Knicks have currently. It wouldn't shock me if the Knicks level up by All-Star break and they become that team where everybody understands they could be a problem and a bona fide top tier 1 team. Okay, so continuing on, let's see where we should go from here. I'm going to go to my man SGA and J-Dub, the 2 young guns out in OKC. My man SGA, of course, 2 seasons in a row has his team at the top of the Western Conference. His finals performances, whew. I mean, these boys really got tested in the finals going up against the Indiana Pacers, particularly in Game 4 in the second half. These guys looked like they were going to go down 3-1 on the road, and J-Dub held it down in that third quarter while SGA switched up and locked guys up defensively, while my man J-Dub carried the offensive load. And by the time the fourth quarter came around, SGA went off and dropped the 15 points in that one quarter, and they were able to tie up the series 2-2. These guys got battle tested not only in the series against Jokic with that zone defense. They went 2-3 zone, then 3-2 zone. I mean, that series, once again, one of these days, I'm going to do a breakdown on that series because it was beautiful. But they really kind of proved themselves, because the Achilles heel for OKC has always been what they're going to do during crunch time. They don't have that many guys who could really just create off the dribble. So during closing moments where they have to protect the lead, these guys tend to falter sometimes. And SGA, I gotta admit, he trusts his teammates and he's been playmaking a lot smoother. Like, SGA has really leveled up. No one really expected him. I mean, for a guy that Steve Ballmer just kind of threw in that Paul George trade, no one really expected him to climb up to this level, but he really proves that he belongs up here. And I've said this before in my previous segments when covering OKC. It wouldn't shock me if J-Dub and SGA, by the end of their careers, finishes as one of the top duos of all time. Like, they may not finish at the very top, but they're going to be mentioned among the greatest duos. Guys like Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. It wouldn't shock me if these guys finish alongside those players. And even when it comes to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're giving them a run for their money because they've converted earlier on than those guys into getting into the finals and just fully grabbing that NBA trophy. Since Tatum is out this season, I would say hopefully next year we get this finals matchup. I would love to see OKC versus the Boston Celtics in the finals. Ooh, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown versus J-Dub and SGA would make for a great finals matchup, and it wouldn't shock me. But the boys down in Boston, they do have the duo out in OKC putting their names into the test as one of the greatest duos of this modern era. This modern era of the 2020s, or I would say the mid 2010s to the early 2020s. J-Dub at the age of 24 has finished an NBA Finals winner. He had his team at the top of the West. He was first team all defensive. Like, this guy really made a name for himself last season, and he's beginning to cement his name into the league. Like, he has all the makings of a champion too. He has no glory in the amateur circuit, no NIL deal. He was never a 5-star recruit. His story is kind of crazy because he's been overlooked almost his whole career. So his relationship with basketball is very different than a guy like LaMelo Ball, who for the most part basketball has rewarded him, whether it be clout through social media or just financially. It wasn't always the case for J-Dub. He kept on putting in work until he got into the league. And he comes from a military family, so you already know he kind of has that background of just being disciplined, and he doesn't necessarily do it for a reward. I'm surprised the San Antonio Spurs did not draft him with that type of background. But continuing on, I'm going to go with my man Giannis right here, who has been performing at a top level. Now I would say the Bucks have wasted the past 3 years for Giannis. And this season is really shaping out for him to be another like MVP level kind of season for him. But the only thing is that he doesn't necessarily have the team because of the luxury tax and all the money they spent, all the draft picks that they sent out. And the only reason I put Damian Lillard on this list right here, right? Notice how I put him here and I didn't put Tatum because Tatum's out for the whole year, is I just wanted to explain this part with Dame. This dynamic between Giannis and Dame was always going to be a very thin line between those two actually succeeding to gain a championship. Dame, in a way, he's a great player. He's going to be one of these players that have a nice storyline. But when it comes to competing at a high level, Dame has never been any higher than this tier 2 level right here. And some of you may not like me saying this, but it is what it is. With Dame, the real proof of the pudding was when Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson went up against him and CJ in the 2019 Western Conference Finals, how easily they swept them. I've always said Dame's kind of, I would say his branding has been great in the NBA. Them putting him in the NBA 75 category, which should have never been. But Dame has never really been higher than this tier 2 level. Never. Remember, his playoff victories came against OKC with Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo, which was never really a great team to begin with. They kind of had a lot of holes. That's why that team broke up so quick. And before Dame left Portland, they were a bottom 5 team defense year in, year out. I would say the last 4 years that he was there. And they were also one of the most expensive teams in the NBA. So it's not like they didn't have talent. So his time in Milwaukee with Giannis was always going to be a very, very narrow window for them to actually get to the finals and win, because Giannis likes to have the ball in his hands. Dame is also the same. Dame is not used to, he's just not used to that. Same thing for Giannis. The fit was never really there. It just looked good because Giannis, you know, I would say this is the end of star players choosing what kind of stars they wanted to play with. And at the same time, Giannis kind of had leverage because his previous owner was trying to sell the team, but also was trying to secure Giannis's extension. So Giannis was able to kind of call out, okay, guys, you guys trade for Dame. And they did. But I believe that era of superstar players choosing their wingmans is pretty much come to an end with this Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee phase. So the only reason I have Dame on this list, once again, is to explain this dynamic. And right now, with the tier 2 status, Dame is actually headed, you know, on the downhill side of this. Even before the injury, he was actually going down this ladder. He was already here in the tier 2, but he's going down. So by the time he comes off his injury, I don't know how to judge it, but it wouldn't shock me if Dame is on this level right here. Again, this hierarchy is based off of impact on the league. It's not based off a guy's skill set. It's based off of the team that they're on, what kind of system they're running, and how they impact the league as far as winning. Dame at his peak was always on this tier, or he was on this ladder. But he never hit this tier 1 right here on this level. And that's mainly because of his defensive liability. And also when it comes to the playoffs, his proficiency is not as high as you would think it is when it comes to shooting. That's another thing that plagues him. So I'm going to take Dame out this list since he's not going to be in the league for this season due to injury. I just wanted to explain the dynamics with him on this list. That's why I just left him up there. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to go to my man Stephen Curry. And surprisingly, the Warriors, if they could stay healthy, they got a good shot to win. Steph is still performing at a very high level. I mean, it's amazing how many, I would say since the 2022 finals, I would say the last couple of seasons for him have been almost a masterclass. I mean, Steph is really, it's really going to be hard to leave him out of that top 10 list when it's all said and done, but he's performing at a really high level, and it's the gravitational pull that's really around him where his teammates could eat, and that's where Jimmy Butler kind of comes in. Jimmy Boy is still performing at a great level, and with him, it's really the fit. It's really the aggression that he brings to the Warriors. They have another on-ball aggressive player who can utilize and create for himself, with that gravitational pull that Stephen Curry kind of draws on defenders. Jimmy doesn't really even have to be performing at this tier 1 level. As long as he continues to get to the free throw line, continues to be aggressive, boxing guys out and just getting the ball and just getting those N1 layups that he loves to get, the Warriors, it's a real dangerous team. And as you can see from right here, also Draymond, he's more of a system guy. And what he brings to the Warriors is really not replaceable at all. I would say it's hard to believe this, but what he brings to the table for the Warriors, it's harder to replace versus Klay Thompson. Like it's almost irreplaceable. Just the defensive IQ, the way he controls the defense, even on the offensive side, just knowing where the ball should be, where guys should make their cuts. Just Draymond is that ultimate system player, and he's definitely a Hall of Famer. And this is where sometimes guys get confused because it's not all about stats. It's about overall impact on the game. And Draymond is definitely one of those kind of players. He, in a way, is the modern day Bill Laimbeer, the guy from the Bad Boy Pistons. He actually was a stretch 5, and he had a nice basketball IQ on him, and he was tough. He brought a level of toughness to the team. Again, what Draymond Green brings to the Warriors is very, very hard to replace. As long as Big Body Dre stays healthy and he stays in shape, this Warriors team could be dangerous. Because again, Steph is still performing at a high level to be in this superstar status still. And the Warriors, we're gonna see, man. It's I don't want to say it's a last dance for them, but the next 2 seasons, it's gonna be very close to that. Okay, continuing on, we spoke about a little bit briefly on the Lakers. Again, Luka, I expect him to be on this status by All-Star break. I'm just basing it off of the kind of setup that they have on their team right now, and just this is coming into the season. Now, with Kevin Durant, interesting enough, he's headed down this ladder. Even though he's still putting up his points per game, he can no longer carry a team. He's past that phase of his career. So he's headed down this ladder. And with the Rockets, my man Şengün, he's climbing up this ladder from, I would say, All-Star, just consistently putting up All-Star numbers, to it's just the way he overall impacts the game. He's moving up this ladder, and I would say Amen Thompson is the real wild card for the Houston Rockets. If he could pass being a fringe All-Star and get into this bucket right here, it can change a lot for the Houston Rockets. And they're pretty much relying more of these guys moving up these ladders than Kevin Durant actually performing at this level. Because every year from now with KD, because he doesn't really work on his body that much as far as like strength, like his physique is still the same, so he's not as strong. So every season, because he relies so much on his skill set, he's gonna start coming down this ladder. But the Rockets are still in a great position. They got Tari Eason, they got a nice bench, they got Jabari Smith Jr. That team has a lot of nice size and depth to them. And of course, Ime Udoka, which is really a championship coach. They're well coached. The organization is heading in the right direction. Houston is really going to make noise. They're one of these teams that are lengthy, like OKC, have a lot of defenders, and low-key, quiet as kept, OKC versus Houston is going to be a nice little rival for the whole season. The regular season games, and if they meet in the playoffs, it's going to be epic. And make no mistake about it, Houston is on that level, because let's not forget, even without KD last season with their team, with Jalen Green, just not having guys who could finish in the clutch, it still took the Warriors 7 games to beat them. So there's for sure a generational shift that's happening in the NBA. It's happening very slowly the past couple of seasons, but I believe this upcoming season we're going to see it become very, very apparent. Continuing on, my man Kawhi Leonard, Mr. Aspiration, Mr. Let me get that side deal. Kawhi Leonard, make no mistake about it, when he's healthy, I believe, was it like either December of 2024 or 2023, the Clippers had a run where they almost won, they won about almost 30 games, I believe, and they lost 5. Like, Kawhi was in his bag. So Kawhi could still be that high impact player, but the health You just don't know what you're really going to get out of him. But the Claw, make no mistake about it, if he could stay healthy for a whole season, I actually have him up here. That's if he could stay healthy. But because the past 5 years, ever since I would say 2019, ever since he was in the Raptors, the health, the consistency really hasn't been there. And it's kind of sad to see because the way his career was being projected in 2019 after winning the finals with the Raptors, he was on his way of being one of those players that can possibly win the finals and finals MVP on 3 different teams. So he's a very highly impactful player. Is that unfortunately health is just not on his side. And going to his wingman, my man James Harden. James Harden is coming off a nice season in LA from last year. I would have him in a tier 1 spot, but because he's been on so many different teams, he actually was making his way down this ladder, but I have him actually coming right back up because now he's probably more comfortable in LA. He's kind of got a longer term deal. If Kawhi could stay healthy and the team that the Clippers got, I mean, they don't even need James Harden to even get up to this tier 1 status again. If he could be that playmaker that he was in Houston when Mike D'Antoni first got there with all these assists that he was getting, I mean, it could be a complete game changer because now they have Bradley Beal who can provide them with more consistent shooting. And also, their real wild card is going to be Zubac. Like, I expect him to be in this all-star status, just either putting up all-star numbers or just being one of these guys that people ask every season, oh, how come he was left off the all-star team? The Clippers, low-key, they have a team. Is that their team is kind of is on the older side of things, and people wonder if they could really stay healthy. Okay, so continuing on, Jaylen Brown. This is going to be a huge season for him because he's going to prove a lot of naysayers wrong on exactly what kind of player he is. And it's really going to come down to his decision making. And this is why I say during the regular season, I'm going to do a couple of game films and just a couple of segments where it's not necessarily just about the film, it's these dynamics. How is his decision making? Because we've seen it play out last season after Tatum went out in the playoffs. Games, I believe, games 5 and 6. Game 5, he had great decision making, but could it be consistent enough, which it wasn't in game 6 where he had a bunch of turnovers and the Knicks eliminated the Celtics. These are the segments I will be going over during the regular season, especially when it comes to guys like Jaylen Brown. But he could level up. If he could be consistent in that, he could level up to this tier right here. Now, when it comes to Jason Tatum, I'm going to open up right here. As you can see, I just pulled them up right here. Jason Tatum has always been in this portion of the ladder. Now, believe it or not, for him to get up here with guys like SGA, Giannis, Jokic, it's actually a further climb for him versus his position versus Jaylen Brown. They're actually a lot closer than Tatum would be to climbing up here to get in on this level. And during the 2024 playoffs, Jaylen Brown, I mean, post All-Star break that season, Jaylen Brown actually was performing at a level where this ladder is at right here. So they were in the finals together, performing at a level like this. But I still have Jaylen Brown as a tier 1 star right now because he is a wingman of Jason Tatum. And also at the same time, he doesn't have that consistency as being the lead guy. This is the first season where we're going to see him in that position. Again, we got a small sample size of it in game 5 versus the Knicks in the playoffs after Tatum went out, where the Celtics had a beautiful game against the Knicks. Jaylen Brown was making very, very smart decisions. He was very disciplined. But also in game 6, he proved that it was hard for him to keep that consistent because he had a bunch of turnovers as he was the guy trying to initiate offense for the Celtics. So this season, we're going to see him more in that role and have a nice sample size, especially if he stays healthy for an 82-game season. But this day and age in the NBA, because of the talent pool and just teams having so many 6'8", 6'7" guys who can just have a nice face-up game, you don't necessarily have to have a player up here to win a championship. You could have 2 guys performing at this level and have a bunch of other guys around this level. The Knicks are in that situation. and they're almost considered a championship team. As you can see, OG right here. Mikal could climb up to being a fringe all-star. The 76ers also, if Embiid stayed healthy, they have a few guys like Paul George performing at this tier 2, Tyrese Maxey, and they also have a rookie who could possibly come up, VJ, as I believe with the 3rd overall pick. If he could be a fringe all-star, they could make noise. So the league is just, the talent pool is a lot higher. You don't have to have guys on this tier to win a championship consistently. Because in the NBA, in the modern era, I would say since the 80s, there's always been about 4 to 5 guys up here, and they're the real superstars of the NBA. It's not a bunch of guys. It's a false marketing from I would say the media partners of the league, because they have to market guys and make you try to watch the games on television, etc. So they try to make you think there's a lot of superstars, but every year in the NBA there's really only about 4 to 5, and then the rest of the guys, they fall under a tier system. And believe it or not, a lot of players, they actually finish at their highest level on this part of the ladder. There's a lot more players that are right here, like Joel Embiid in his MVP year. He was at this part of the ladder. When he proves himself in the playoffs, he can get up to this part of the ladder for maybe that particular season. Same thing for Devin Booker in 2021 in the playoffs. He was at this part of the ladder. Kawhi, when he was healthy in San Antonio, he was in this part. He was in the superstar part. But he's actually come down now because of his health. Paul George, at his height, when he was in the Pacers, he was performing in the playoffs going up against LeBron at this part of the ladder. Trae Young also, when he had his playoff runs, Trae Young could level up and actually perform at this part of the ladder. Matter of fact, this is nice to jump to the Hawks real quick right here. Trae Young right now, he's actually come down, and he's in the tier 2 part right now because of the way. It's really because the fact that he's been through a number of coaches. His teams have made numerous trades multiple times. He's had different versions of his team, and the only outlier is really him. That's the only consistent part. So if they're still losing, it might be a Trae Young issue. And that's why, for me, I would have Trae Young for this upcoming season as one of the key guys that has the most pressure. He almost has championship pressure on him. He doesn't have to get a championship, but his team has to perform at a higher level than years past. The Jamal Murray experience went wrong. They gave up first-round draft picks, multiple first-round draft picks for that version of their team. There was the version of their team where they traded for Bojan before that. And for the Hawks, I would say they have a nice couple of guys that are like on the fringe of being all-stars. Of course, Zachary, he's climbing up. He's going to be a solid pro. Same thing for Jalen Johnson. If they could climb up from this fringe all-star into this all-star mode, who knows? The Hawks could have a solid winning season. They don't have to win a championship or even get deep into the playoffs, but they have to have at least a winning season. If they finish like 7 seed, 8 seed, for Trae Young, it's not going to be a good look, especially in this Eastern Conference where a lot of guys are injured and the conference is really considered weak. They have a solid coach. They got more than enough talent. KP, I would say KP, he would also fall in line right here as a fringe all-star because he can't stay healthy long enough. But he does put up productive numbers. That's where this tier 4 list comes in. These guys are not necessarily all-stars, but some of them might be still on the young part of their career as they're on the come up. But other guys, they're on the fringe of just being that consistent all-star. Guys like Bane, even Zion to a degree. Zion had a healthy 72-game season just a couple years ago, but he only put up 22 points a game. He wasn't even like considered third all-NBA team, not even an all-star, because his numbers are they're not quite as there. But we'll get more into that fringe part of the ladder right here, as there's going to be more guys stuck in this tier 2 part. And there's some guys coming out of that tier 2 part like Wemby. Wemby, I expect this season for him to come out of that. His team is a lot better, and he can get guys that can get him the ball in better spots, and he doesn't have to at least make for himself as much. But it looks like he put on some muscle mass, and he should be able to climb up into this tier 1 status by All-Star break. I would be shocked if he's not in this tier 1 status. Now, J-Dub, I don't know why I have him right here in this tier 2 status, because honestly, the fact that he's a secondary scorer on a team that's finished at the top of the Western Conference, they won the NBA championship last year, and they won 84 games in that one season. So 2 years in a row at the top of the conference. I gotta put him up at the tier 1 status. Yeah, so let's bump him up right there. J-Dub definitely should be going up there. I was kind of bugging out for that. J-Dub, yeah, he definitely should be considered tier 1. No lie, Joel Embiid, if he stays healthy for a whole season and his team is not as productive, then I will have to bump him down to this tier 2 status. But I expect him to be performing at a tier 1 level. I expect the 76ers to make noise this season, especially if PG can come back and just be serviceable. He doesn't have to be an all-star. He could just be serviceable. But PG, even though I have him in this tier 2 status, I mean, honestly, if he has another season like last year, because his numbers are really going down, I would have him climbing down this ladder. And it wouldn't shock me if guys like Paolo take his spot in the tier 2 spot right here. But this tier 2, guys, some guys are trying to climb out of it, like Donovan Mitchell. I mean, Mitchell had his team at the top of the conference. They were performing like this during the regular season, but Mitchell has way too many playoff blunders, way too many heartbreaking playoff losses. And this is why I have him on this part of the ladder. He's sort of just been stuck here for a couple of seasons now. Again, he was performing at this level during the regular season, but I don't know if it's injuries, but the Spider is going to have to solidify himself with a real playoff win, like against a solid team. I would say for the Cavs, it's either Eastern Conference Finals or NBA Finals. That should be the expectation for them. They're like on the same tier as the Knicks. They might actually be even more well-suited based off of their roster. They have a lot of guys on this team. If Evan Mobley could take a step up on this ladder, same thing for Garland. They're on this all-star level, right? This is fringe all-stars right here. They're on this all-star level. They put up all-star numbers, but there's another step up they need to take. Even though they're sort of like the wingman to their team, there's another step up. Again, this tier 2 status right here, a lot of guys are looking to move up from this tier. Like Pascal Siakam last year in the playoffs with the Pacers. This guy, he had a solid playoff run. Like he was performing at a real high level. And that's why I have him here with Tyrese Halliburton. See, both of these guys, they don't have to be performing at almost a tier 1 level because their team is more of like a system setup. Pascal is going to be set up by Tyrese on quick transitions to get mismatches, post up someone, or maybe even shoot a 3. And Pascal was doing that very nice last season, not only in the finals, but also against the Knicks, as they couldn't quite match up with him because of his size. And again, I have Tyrese right here as a tier 2 because he's more in a system. It's a system that the Pacers play in. The personnel that they have around them, like Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, Naismith. They have they're just deep. They're deep in the same way as OKC. But their play styles with Obi Toppin just running in the wing, their play style fits what he does perfectly. So he doesn't have to be a player that has to average 29 points a game, sort of like Trae Young, for his team to elevate. Speaking of players that's on the Pacers, Mathurin, also I expect him to take a step up because Tyrese isn't there, to either be in that all-star category or just be on this part of the ladder where he's almost right there to be an all-star. If he could take a step up as a 6th overall pick and just kind of step his game up as he did last year in the finals, having back-to-back 20-point games, same thing in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks, Mathurin proved that he can be that guy. But again, the Pacers are just so deep, but now they don't have a stretch 5. We're going to see how the new rendition of this team really looks like. And we may not even fully see it until Tyrese comes back in the 2026 season. But at the end of the day, I would say Pascal, man, he was performing at a high level. And I would say, man, I don't want to put him on this part of the ladder, but last year in the playoffs, as far as carrying the scoring, Pascal was so consistent in that. and just being able to defend multiple positions. He was doing a lot for the Pacers. Really underrated. And Pascal really has proven to be a nice fit coming from the Toronto Raptors. That trade really worked out lovely for the Pacers. Now, another player on this part of the ladder, the tier 2, is Ja Morant. He has a good team around him. Even though they lost Desmond Bane, he still has a number of solid players around him. Ja Morant, no lie, in 2021, he was performing almost at a tier 1 level. He was at this part of the ladder, but he's climbed down ever since coming back with all his injuries, some of his lack of focus with the gun incidents. He's climbed down this ladder, but he's never really climbed back up. But who knows? He could potentially climb back up, but GG Jackson is proven to be a nice little wingman with him. And he's also probably more proficient as far as scoring. He doesn't have to take as many shots as Ja, but he almost averages the same amount of points. And who knows, maybe if the offense runs through Jackson Jr., we could see more players eat off of it versus Ja Morant, who's really not as good of a shooter, but maybe his playmaking skills needs to step up a little bit even more and just set guys up. In a way, the Grizzlies, they kind of had issues with their coaching. The assistant coach was setting up offensive schemes and the head coach was kind of butting heads, and the GM undermined the coach by hiring his assistant. They have a lot of internal things going on with this team. But at the end of the day, they do have enough talent where they should be making noise. But Ja has to work his way back up this ladder because he was performing at a high level, I would say, in 2021. And people thought that he could really be that difference maker. And he still could be, but Ja is at a point in his career right now where he still has to prove himself. He still has to prove himself, not necessarily as far as being an all-star, but he has to prove himself as being that leader that can carry his team into the Western Conference Finals or even perhaps the NBA Finals, because the way OKC just mollywopped them in the playoffs, I mean, they're not even close. And the injury bug is really killing Ja Morant. He can't stay healthy long enough. So let's see. In this part, we could also talk about De'Aaron Fox. If he could step up his playmaking ability, because I don't remember De'Aaron Fox being known as a passer. And this is an interesting conundrum with the San Antonio Spurs. Like, they need De'Aaron Fox because a pick and roll with him and Wemby is deadly. We're talking about De'Aaron Fox's speed and Wemby's ability to pop out and also be a problem as far as being a mismatch down low. But De'Aaron Fox, his passing is something we're going to pay attention to, because I don't remember him ever being known as being that guy that can, make those difficult passes. So this is where the game film kind of comes in during the regular season. We're going to go over that nuance and take a look at more of that scenario, because Wemby used to get the ball in some awkward positions, and that's something his first 2 seasons in the league that was kind of suspicious, because the Spurs didn't have anybody to give Wemby the ball in his spots. He had to create for himself, and that's when you would see him get stripped. So that De'Aaron Fox dynamic, I believe De'Aaron Fox could climb up to this level right here while Wemby gets up into that tier 1, and eventually Wemby is going to get up to this level. I mean, there's no escaping that. Wemby is going to be up there, but it's just a matter of time. And speaking of matter of time, my man Paolo Banchero, Paolo had a great season. He got a little injury bug last year in the beginning, but him and Franz, man, you know what's crazy about the Magic? How they maxed out both of these guys. So it looks like they have a lot of faith in them. And it wouldn't shock me both of these guys elevate at some point. Maybe not this season, but they're definitely gunning for that tier 1 status. They have the talent level to get up there. As some of these guys begin to age out, Paolo and Franz, it's just a skill set of Franz alone, man. Franz, if he can get that 3-point shooting up, that pull-up jumper up, same thing for Paolo, man. He's going to have to get those the shooting up. The shooting might limit him on this part of the ladder. It might limit him on that. But he has the size, the skill set, The passing ability, just the shooting is it's almost like a Men Thompson. And if he could be that consistent defensive presence. But the Magic are just like the Houston Rockets, just like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're deep. They have a number of guys who can just defend multiple positions. So the makeup of some of these teams are very different. And going forward, I would say into this next era, post LeBron, KD, that's going to be the makeup for a lot of these teams. They're going to have multiple players 6'6" and above who could defend multiple positions and who could even shoot. So they may not have anyone that hits the top part of this list right here, the superstar status, or even this fringe superstar right here. But they just have so many guys on the team just impacting the game, just like the Pacers, the Rockets. And that's why I have Luka and LeBron right here, because guys like Luka, especially with LeBron being older and just not playing as much, he can't get past those teams like the Houston Rockets, all those defenders, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have multiple defenders, even though they lost just one of their most versatile defenders. The Memphis Grizzlies have a number of players who could defend multiple positions. A lot of these teams are moving towards that type of archetype, like the Aaron Gordons, guys like him. Like, teams have a lot of players that are kind of coming into the league defending multiple positions. And, you know, players like Luka going up against teams that have three players sort of like this, it's going to be very hard. Like, that's going to be the main difference from this current era versus the era of LeBron James mid-2010s, is that LeBron didn't really have to go up against teams with multiple 6'8" guys defending multiple positions, and they're also shooting. So continuing on, let's just see who else we got here. Pascal Sengun. And Sengun's skill set is crazy. I expect him to keep continuing to climb up. Now, the tier 3, it's not that many guys. Bradley Beal, to be honest with you, when he was on the Wizards averaging 30 points a game, he was on the tier 2 level. That's like the highest he's ever gotten. Bradley Beal has really got that all-star branding on his name, really from performing on a team that had no expectations at all. You know, so he's stuck in this tier right here. Guys like LaMelo Ball, he's going to have to avoid falling into that same trap. You know, LaMelo Ball, he needs to get serious at some point to not fall into that rabbit hole and just be more of an impactful player. But I'm not sure if he's even capable of that. Him, Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, oh yeah, these guys kind of fall into that same realm. Now, Sabonis, he could impact the game, but he can't be a number one. He can never be a number one guy on the team to carry a team. But he could be sort of like in that, he could be on that secondary role, or even a third tier player on a championship bound team. I'm not talking about regular season team. He could be like the Chris Bosh of the Miami Heat for like a championship team. Same thing for Jaren Jackson Jr. This tier right here is really guys who put up all-star numbers, but every single season we see them talk about guys who got kind of fucked over and left out of the all-star team. And that's pretty much where this tier falls. And again, a lot of rookies, guys like Brandon Miller, they're looking to climb up and get into that. You know, Chet, if he levels up, he can get into putting all-star numbers, and it's going to look different because his team is going to be winning games. Same thing for Amen. We're going to do a lot of game film on him and his playmaking abilities, especially in crunch time situations. Can he get Kevin Durant the ball in good spots? Because when KD starts going ISO, that's not necessarily a good thing all the time in crunch time moments, especially in the playoffs. That's going to be a problem. Could Amen, you know, with Fred VanVleet being out, could Amen actually step up and be that playmaker for the Houston Rockets to get guys in their spots? Now, going down this list with the fringe all-stars. Yo, one guy right here, I call him Baby Luka, Danny Avia. For the Portland Trailblazers, I would say, wow. He has a nice skill set. He has a very nice skill set. But I'm curious to see how Portland will use him. Because it wouldn't shock me if at some point his skills supersede what that team needs from him, and he probably requests a trade to a different team. Sort of like I would say, what's a player a long time ago that kind of went through that same circumstance? Hito Turkoglu. He kind of went through that same, circumstance where his skill set was way too high for what the team that he was on actually wanted from him and was willing to pay. But Deni Avdija has a very versatile, kind of Luka-like skill set. But I expect him to actually climb up this ladder, and he has the ability to actually be in this tier 2 status. He's going to have to take the same leap as I would say Evan Mobley and Darius Garland had to take, I would say, a couple seasons ago. Or even last year. I would say even last year. They took a leap when they switched out their head coach. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Chauncey Billups uses Deni, because the Portland Trailblazers, low-key, they have a very good defensive team. So a lot of their shooting, especially with Dame not being there, this team just actually might be too overcrowded. And it wouldn't shock me if they have Deni coming off the bench. But he's way more talented than just a bench player. Of course, Desmond Bane, he's on another crowded team, but he's going to have to carry some of that scoring load. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Orlando Magic utilize him. How does he work out with Paolo and Franz? Now, Jonathan Kuminga. This is going to be a very interesting season. We're going to go over this in the film. Just the way he adjusts to just being with the Warriors right now, knowing that this is a 1-year deal. He has the potential for being in this bracket. But the real question is he going to progress his game big enough as far as being a playmaker, reading the game, to be on this level? Because if he could be a playmaker sort of like Julius Randle, he could be on this tier. But he could also be misunderstood like Julius Randle if he doesn't develop the IQ side of his game. That's really the clash between him and Steve Kerr. Now, you're also seeing a few players that don't want to be stuck here too long, like Brandon Miller. He doesn't want to end up like Brandon Ingram, where it's like you're like this fringe all-star for most of your career. Gotta be very careful, because the team he's on is also similar to the way Ingram was on the Pelicans, no direction. And you're just putting up 22 points a game every single season. And you're always in this fringe all-star, kind of all-star mode. You're just stuck here. Jalen Johnson, I expect him to level up, because he does have that two-way defensive ability. His shooting needs to improve a slight bit, but the way Trae Young is able to play make, he could put him in a nice spot. Trae Young's real motive this season is to get his other guys to be all-stars, or at least fringe all-stars. Jalen Johnson and also Zachary. Zachary does have the skill set, because he can shoot. He does have the skill set to get up here. So that's going to be Trae Young's job this season. I didn't really include a lot of the rookies that just came into the league, like Harper, on this ladder, because they're not yet proven. But during the All-Star break, I'll add a few more names to this. But Steven Castle, man, the fact that he's a two-way player and he just keeps getting better and better. I have him climbing up and getting into this bracket here. But the next level up is how much the Spurs team is going to be winning. Because right now, surprisingly, they only have him projected to win 40 games, which they should be winning more. Wemby definitely wants that Michael Jordan portfolio. So don't be shocked if Wemby elevates and the Spurs are sitting at least in the 4th seed this season. And Wemby hits that tier 1 status on this list. And guys like Steven Castle are going to level up to get into this fringe all-star, or just becoming potentially a first-time all-star. But we'll see how it plays out. This was just a nice little preview into this upcoming season of just how the hierarchy is playing out. But again, we'll be doing film, going over some of these nuances I talked about, like the playmaking of Amen Thompson. Same thing for De'Aaron Fox. Also Kuminga. Could he actually frame his game into the system that the Warriors want to play? Also, Jaylen Brown is being the top guy with Jason Tatum being out. And fuck it, just freestyling off the top of my head, even the dynamics of, I would say, Jalen Williams and SGA just having that target on their back. see them being the number one team, just being known as the champions, defending champions, they're definitely going to have that target on their back night in, night out. And we're going to see how they react. So there's a few dynamics we're going to cover throughout the regular season. And I'll touch base right back on this list as we'll update it during the All-Star break. So until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.